Welcome to NIMROD TV, your channel for insightful analysis of global affairs. Today we delve into the complex relationship between China, the West, and Africa. Is a new Cold War brewing on the African continent? Join us as we explore this question. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Now let's dive in. The term Cold War often evokes memories of the US-Soviet rivalry. Today, as China emerges as a global superpower, some analysts draw parallels to this era. This time the battleground is not Europe, but Africa. The continent's vast resources and growing economies have made it a focal point for both China and the West. This competition, while primarily economic, has significant geopolitical implications. Is Africa truly becoming the battleground for a new Cold War between China and the West? The original Cold War had a profound impact on Africa. Newly independent African nations found themselves caught in the crossfire. Both superpowers sought to influence these emerging nations, often prioritizing their own strategic interests. This led to a legacy of instability and underdevelopment in many parts of Africa. This historical context is crucial for understanding contemporary dynamics between Africa, China, and the West. The end of the Cold War created a vacuum in international relations. Africa, no longer a central theater, received less attention from the West. This period saw the rise of globalization and the expansion of Western-led institutions. While these institutions promoted economic development, they also faced criticism for imposing strict conditions. This context is essential for understanding China's entry onto the African stage. China's economic rise led to increased engagement with Africa. China's approach differed markedly from the West's, focusing on infrastructure development and trade. This no-strings-attached approach proved attractive to many African leaders. This surge in China-Africa engagement has reshaped the geopolitical landscape. Western nations now face a significant competitor in Africa. Let's continue our exploration by examining the strategies employed by both China and the West. China's engagement with Africa is most visible in its infrastructure projects. Chinese companies are building roads, railways, ports, and power plants. This infrastructure boom is transforming Africa's economic landscape. However, China's approach has drawn criticism for lack of transparency and potential debt traps. Despite these concerns, China's infrastructure investment remains a cornerstone of its engagement with Africa. China's engagement with Africa is driven by its demand for resources. Africa is richly endowed with oil, gas, minerals, and timber. China has become Africa's largest trading partner, but the trade relationship is often unbalanced. Despite criticisms, China's demand for African resources has provided significant economic benefits. Resource exports have generated revenue, created jobs, and spurred economic growth. China's engagement with Africa extends to political and military cooperation. China has cultivated close ties with many African governments, providing aid and diplomatic support. It has also become a major arms supplier to Africa. However, China's growing influence has raised concerns about its intentions and potential for exacerbating conflicts. Some critics argue that China's support for authoritarian regimes undermines democracy and human rights. Recognizing the importance of winning hearts and minds, China has invested in soft power initiatives. It has established Confucius Institutes and increased scholarships for African students. China's soft power push aims to reshape perceptions and promote a positive image. However, some critics view these efforts as propaganda tools. Despite challenges, China's soft power diplomacy remains a key component of its strategy in Africa. The West has shifted its focus from traditional aid to promoting trade and investment. Western nations are engaging with Africa through trade agreements and investment treaties. This shift reflects a recognition that sustainable development requires more than financial assistance. However, this approach has drawn criticism for prioritizing Western economic interests. Balancing these competing priorities remains a key challenge for Western policymakers. Security cooperation remains a significant aspect of the West's engagement with Africa. The rise of transnational terrorism has prompted increased collaboration in counterterrorism operations. Western nations are providing support to African countries grappling with extremist groups. However, Western security cooperation has been subject to scrutiny for potentially militarizing development. Navigating the complex security challenges while upholding human rights remains a delicate balancing act. Promoting democracy and good governance has been a long-standing pillar of Western foreign policy in Africa. Western nations have invested in supporting democratic transitions and promoting human rights. However, these efforts have faced significant challenges due to historical legacies and resistance from some African leaders. Finding effective ways to support democratic aspirations while respecting national sovereignty remains complex. Addressing the root causes of governance challenges is essential for sustainable development. There is a growing awareness of the need to offer African nations a viable alternative to China's model of engagement. Western nations are emphasizing transparency, sustainability, and mutual benefit. This includes offering more competitive financing terms and promoting responsible investment practices. However, countering China's influence requires a deep understanding of Africa's diverse needs and priorities. Building genuine partnerships based on mutual respect and shared interests is crucial for success. The engagement of China and the West in Africa has brought significant economic transformation. Investment in infrastructure has spurred economic growth and created new opportunities. However, concerns persist about rising income inequality and dependence on resource extraction. The lack of diversification in many African economies poses a challenge to sustainable development. Balancing the opportunities presented by increased trade and investment with the need for inclusive growth remains key. China's and the West's engagement has reshaped Africa's political landscape. African nations are now courted by both sides, gaining leverage. This competition offers opportunities but also risks, like debt trap diplomacy. African nations must navigate these dynamics to secure investment without over-reliance. Beyond the economic and political spheres, the growing presence of China and the West in Africa has also had a noticeable impact on the social and cultural fabric of the continent. The influx of Chinese workers and entrepreneurs in particular has led to increased cultural exchange and interaction. Chinese restaurants, shops, and businesses have sprung up in major cities across Africa, introducing new cultural elements and fostering closer ties between the two regions. This increased interaction has at times been accompanied by friction and misunderstanding. Cultural differences, language barriers, and contrasting work ethics have, in some cases, led to tensions between local communities and Chinese migrants. Addressing these issues and promoting intercultural understanding is crucial for ensuring harmonious relations and fostering a climate of mutual respect. The influence of Western culture, particularly through media, music, and fashion, continues to be pervasive in many parts of Africa, often shaping aspirations and influencing social norms. This has led to debates about cultural imperialism and the erosion of traditional African values. African societies are grappling with how to balance the embrace of globalization and external influences with the preservation of their own unique cultural identities. This interplay of cultural forces presents both opportunities and challenges, as African nations navigate the complex process of cultural exchange and adaptation in an increasingly interconnected world. One potential, albeit unsettling future scenario, is the escalation of competition between China and the West into a full-blown Cold War on African soil. This scenario envisions a divided continent, with nations forced to choose sides between these global superpowers. Economic ties would deepen along ideological lines, with aid, investment, and trade flowing primarily to aligned nations. Militarily, this rivalry could fuel proxy conflicts with both sides arming and supporting opposing factions in volatile regions. Each power might establish military bases and increase their naval presence off African coasts, heightening tensions and the risk of direct confrontation. The African Union's ability to mediate disputes and foster continental unity would be severely tested, potentially leading to a period of instability and conflict. Culturally, a new Cold War would likely see intensified propaganda efforts, with each side promoting its own model of development and governance while demonizing the other. Educational exchanges and cultural programs could become tools of ideological influence, further dividing societies and hindering cross-cultural understanding. This scenario represents a worst-case outcome, one that would be detrimental to all parties involved. It highlights the importance of responsible engagement, dialogue, and a commitment to shared interests over zero-sum competition. A more optimistic, yet perhaps less likely scenario is one characterized by increased cooperation and coordination between China, the West, and African nations. Recognizing the shared challenges facing the continent, such as climate change, poverty, and disease, these global powers might choose to prioritize collaboration over competition. This scenario could see the emergence of joint development projects, pooling resources and expertise to tackle complex issues. For example, China's infrastructure prowess could be combined with Western technology and financing to develop sustainable energy solutions or expand access to clean water and sanitation. Cooperation on security matters, such as combating terrorism and transnational crime, could also be enhanced, fostering peace and stability. This cooperative approach would require a shift in mindset, moving away from zero-sum calculations and embracing a more inclusive approach to global governance. It would also necessitate a genuine commitment to listening to African voices and prioritizing African priorities. While this scenario faces significant hurdles, it offers the best hope for addressing the multifaceted challenges facing the continent and ensuring a more prosperous and equitable future for all. Perhaps the most intriguing and potentially transformative future scenario is one where Africa itself takes center stage, charting its own course and becoming a major player in global affairs. This African-century scenario envisions a continent that leverages its vast resources, youthful population, and growing economic clout to assert its independence and shape its own destiny. This scenario hinges on several factors. Firstly, African nations would need to prioritize good governance, tackling corruption, strengthening institutions, and ensuring accountability. Investing in education, healthcare, and infrastructure would be crucial for unlocking the potential of their youthful populations. Secondly, African countries would need to diversify their economies, moving beyond reliance on extractive industries and developing manufacturing, technology, and innovation sectors. Finally, African nations would need to strengthen regional integration, fostering cooperation and trade within the continent, and presenting a united front on the global stage. This would require overcoming historical divisions, promoting peace and security, and working collaboratively to address shared challenges. An African century would not only transform the continent itself, but would also reshape the global order. It would provide a powerful counter-narrative to the dominant narratives of great power competition, and demonstrate the potential for developing countries to chart their own paths towards prosperity and influence. The relationship between China, the West, and Africa is complex and evolving. The narrative of a new Cold War fails to capture the full nuance. Africa is an active agent in shaping its own destiny. African nations leverage their economic and political clout. They pursue partnerships based on mutual benefit. This strategic autonomy shows Africa's growing confidence. The future of this trilateral relationship remains uncertain. Cooperation remains a viable path. The choices made by leaders will determine the outcome. The stakes are high and the world is watching. The challenges facing Africa are too great to be addressed through competition and division. Climate change, poverty, disease, and conflict require global cooperation. Africa has the potential to be a major engine of global growth and innovation. Realizing this potential requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders. China can play a constructive role in supporting Africa's development. The West can also make significant contributions. The key lies in fostering a spirit of partnership. This requires listening to African voices and working collaboratively. The future of Africa depends on our ability to embrace a collaborative approach. The journey ahead is fraught with challenges, but the potential rewards make it worth taking. Thank you for joining us on NIMROD TV. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell.